This is Water Elemental.
And this is Jolly Green.
And welcome to the prototype of the Hex TCG podcast, Hexology.
Oh man, we're going to be updating you on all kinds of great stuff.
If I had fireworks, I'd totally use them. Pew, pew, pew. It's like a celebration of happy.
So what do we got to talk about today, Water?
Well, since we have no place to start from, we're not going to go through all the old patch notes. We're going to talk about the last two patches, version 8.2.2 Alpha and 8.2.3 Alpha, as well as a lot of the other blog posts and other interesting information that they put out in the past couple of weeks.
This can range from anything from card changes to new additions to removals to anything that might have changed within the landscape of the Alpha.
And since it's an Alpha, all of this can change in an instant, so what we're updating you on is the consistent change between now until the open beta, where things are going to slow down a bit, because cards are being removed, cards are being added, cards are being changed, cards are getting new art, all sorts of fun stuff.
So one of the first things I want to talk about is, let's just get right into it, the new cards. We have a Doppelgadget, which is a little 3-cost artifact guy. He says at the start of your turn, you may transform this artifact into a target non-shapeshifter artifact you control, and it gains this ability. Now, this seems pretty busted to me. I don't know about you, but it's a 3-cost artifact that can become any other artifact.
Not only that, it can change each turn, so you can have it become one artifact for offensive abilities, but if the changes, if things change, you can turn it to something more defensively.
Yeah, or your target's removed, or it becomes less useful. It just seems extremely versatile.
Because I can see this being useful, like if you have a Hex Engine out, you put down Hex Engine, and then Doppelgadget, and then you're producing a lot of mana. But if you actually get your mana base up to the point where you don't need 2 Hex Engines, you can switch it to something totally different.
And, I mean, say you have a 7-drop bomb artifact creature, late game, this thing is still useful. You have to wait for a turn for it to come active, but it just seems like a no-brainer in an artifact deck.
Yeah, you just got to be careful not to target legendaries, because if you target legendaries, you'll get rid of your the original copy, and then it goes bye-bye.
Oh, legendary rule. Next up, we have Eldin's Distress Signal. It's a 3/1 blue threshold that says exhaust 3 troops you control. Oh, it's a constant, by the way. And this constant transforms into Eldon the Imprisoned. So
this is the blue version of kind of like the scaling cards, kind of like changing over time. And this one's kind of fun because it starts out as a constant and then becomes a troop instead of playing a troop into play first. So they have to kind of prevent you from getting that constant activated. By the time it changes, you're not able to counter it.
And Eldon the Imprisoned, he also has a 3-cost, 1 blue threshold. Doesn't really matter because that's not how you play him anyway. Says this troop can't attack or block. At the end of the turn, if 3 or more troops you control dealt damage to an opposing champion this turn, transform this troop into Eldon the Liberated. It also has a 2 payment. Target troop you control gets flight this turn. So, and it's a 2/4. But if it can't attack or block, that is kind of irrelevant. But while it's Eldon the Imprisoned, I mean, you can still give flight to things, so it's not completely worthless, but it's still not super potent.
No. But finally, his final form is Eldon the Liberated. Same cost. He is a 2/4, actually able to attack with flight. When this troop you control deals damage to an opposing champion, draw a card, and he can give creatures flight. So in the end, all that work lets you have a 2/4 flyer that allows other creatures to have flying, and you get to draw cards every time a troop deals damage to an opponent.
I don't know. It seems okay, but it seems a lot of work to make everything you own a magpie.
Yeah, I like this card mainly because the art, because when he's finally freed, he just looks like mad, and he's like, I'm finally throwing fireballs at people!
Oh, it has a heck of a lot of flavor to it. He seems like this crazy awesome mage that was put in a cage, and yeah, now he is free,
And he might have some significance into the lore, or maybe a dungeon or something like that, so that's something to keep in mind too.
Indeed. Next up we have Lord Adam the Powerful. 4/1 white threshold. He's a 4/4 with Steadfast, and he says, Void Lord Adam, Lord Benjamin, and Lord Alexander. Create the Triumvirate and put it into play.
Now, those are the other two legendary humans for the blue threshold and the red threshold. They kind of are like the leaders of the humans in that color. And then when they're actually fused together in this Dragon Ball Z
Triforce
craziness
thing,
Triforce,
the lion.
I call it the Voltron because of the line in the middle.
Makes complete sense. And basically, it's a 9-cost 9/9 with flight, speed, and steadfast. And it says when this troop attacks, draw 3 cards, then gain 3 health for each card in your hand, then deal 3 damage to each opposing champion and troop. It's a crazy awesome bomb.
But you have to pay, I think there are 2 4 cost and 1 3 cost. I'm not entirely sure. I don't have it up.
4 cost.
Ugh. That's a lot to kind of work towards. And it's multicolored, so you would be having to run 3 different thresholds.
But that's not necessarily a huge problem, because white is showing that it has a lot of cards that are going to allow you to circumvent threshold.
That is true. They just changed a couple of cards to let you do that, which we'll get into a little bit later. But this card is probably the only multicolor card I've seen in the whole game so far.
Yeah, I believe it is. It's the only one with a gold background and that sort of themology to it. But, yeah, I do like what it's showing about the flavor of white. It's allowing white to be the basis for multicolor. And I kind of like that idea because it's not something that you ever saw in Magic a lot. White never had that ability.
Yeah, and they're kind of focusing more on the theme that humans are able to band together with other kind of magical energies, where like blood and wild are just like we're kind of have to stick together with our own natural magic, that we're not going to expand to anything like the ruby or the sapphire or anything like that.
That's just how it is at the moment.
And it has a good flavor to it. I love the card. I love Voltron, and hopefully we can get like an extended art version of that.
Most definitely. Next up, we have the Gearsmith, and this card has completely got me into wanting to make a dwarven deck, red-blue dwarves with artifacts, because this guy's just amazing. He's a 1 for a 1/1. Says when this troop enters play, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may put an artifact from among them into your hand. If you do, it gets a permanent -1 cost. Shuffle the remaining cards into your deck.
And he's not legendary, so you can copy him using other blue abilities. You can bounce him to your hand using like Buccaneer and play him again for 2. There's so many different ways you can use this card.
He's moderate cantrip, and he's a really good 1-drop. He just allows you to fix your deck, and if you play him right and you get lucky, he's also ramp.
Turn 2 Hex Engine.
Yeah, he's ramp.
He's fantastic, and that's the power that artifact blue cards needed, because it took so long for you to get those artifacts into play that faster decks were like, well, I'm just gonna wipe your board and then go in. I'm gonna wipe your board and go in. So it's like this gives speed to artifacts, and it's what they needed.
Yeah, so that concludes the portion of the segment that talks about the new cards in patch 8.22. The other things in patch 8.22 is just a lot of bug fixes.
We're not going to go over bug fixes unless it's really important, but it's just a lot of small stuff like, this card won't trigger this effect, or this card triggers this now.
Or this thing should properly interact with this, or yeah, this shouldn't cause your game to crash. So we're not really going to talk about that much because it's stuff that should be in the game anyway. But next up we have the patch version 8.23, and this also comes with a bunch of new cards, and it's got a really neat bomb to start off with. Green, which has also set itself out to be the big ramp color, comes out with a huge 9-drop. This guy is awesome. He's 9 for a 9/9 crush steadfast. When he enters play, you gain 9 health, and when he dies, put him back in your hand. So he's, I don't know. It's not huge, but the fact that he has crush and steadfast, you gain a bunch of life. And
if they try to kill him, he goes back to your hand.
And you just play him again and gain a whole another 9 life. Whoop-de-doo.
And there's not much voiding cards so far in this set, and a lot of them revolve around you actually having him in the graveyard, so he's kind of like, you won't be able to get rid of me that easily.
Next up, we have Lixil, the Deathless Gem. Now, she was already in the game, but they changed her. And what she says now is she's 3 for a 3/3, one white threshold. And she says, when this troop enters play, choose a standard resource from among those currently in your deck and gain that threshold. And she has an invincibility threshold of 1 of every color. And this is what I was talking about with white being the color that's going to fix your other thresholds. This chick is exactly what I was talking about.
Because you only need to run maybe 1 of each shard in your deck, and that as well as 4 Shards of Fate, so you're able to kind of use her, as long as with Shards of Fate, to actually get that threshold a lot faster. You may not get ramp as easily, but you'll have the threshold.
Yeah, to make her viable, you'd at least have to run 4 solid colors and splash the other one. Just to have 1 resource of the other remaining color, and this Lixil will activate it, so it's not really that big of a deal. But invincibility is neat, and she's good even without the invincibility triggered. 3 for a 3/3 is still solid, especially when you get to fix another resource. And very much in line with that category, we have a 1-cost artifact, Adaptable Infusion Device. It's just a standard artifact, not a creature. It says when it enters play, choose a standard resource from all those currently in your deck and gain that threshold. So it has Lixil's ability, but for 1. And it's not a dead card after that either. It has an ability for sacrifice this artifact to draw a card.
Now this can combo really well with other artifacts where, yes, it's already on the field, but you're able to change it using other cards' effects to turn it into a warbot or upgrade it into another ability. So even though it's a 1-cost, grab a resource, even if you don't want to use the sacrifice the artifact, draw a card, you can transform it into other things, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, but I don't see this being used in like a heavy artifact deck. I think this is just going to be splashed to help you color fix in decks that are really heavy on multiple colors.
And in drafting, that's another thing that will have a good use for if you can't get any good artifacts.
It's going to be a very good limited card.
Next up is Bone Warrior.
And man, this is not a good card. It's
not a good card. It's a 2-cost with a 2-black threshold, 1/2 undead troop. When this troop dies, transform this into a pile of bones and put it into play.
And boy, if that name says anything, it's exactly it. It's just a pile of bones.
It's a 0/1 with this troop cannot attack or block, with a 4-cost tapping effect to transform this troop back into Bone Warrior.
Yeah, that's a lot of effort for nothing. It's persistent. That's the entirety of this card. It just sticks around.
There are other cards that I think will have better persistence than this, because there's cards that you can just bounce from the graveyard back to your hand, or cards that will go back to your hand. But this, it's a 6. Essentially, you put 2 to put it into play, and then every time you want to bring it back, it's 4. So it's like I can get 2 sacrifices from it if I want to use it for a certain ability, or if it dies, I use it as a blocker, then get rid of it using another effect. But there are better cards you can run for 2.
I don't know, if you're ever in a situation where paying that 4 to turn the pile of bones back into a 1/2, you're in trouble.
There's so much other things you can do with it. If it was like a really, really, like if it got a block, at least that would make sense. It's like, okay, it can block again, so you kind of have to go through it twice. But it can't. I don't know what they're trying to do with this card.
That's an expensive blocking engine.
Yay.
Concubunny does the exact same thing, and it's so much better. If you want to make a bunch of blockers, then...
Concubunny doesn't have to die for it to come back to life. It just pops things out.
No, but that's on a different level. Next, we have the Servant of Shathak. It's a 1-cost, 1 blue threshold, 2/2 flyer. But it has a drawback to it. It says you can only include this troop in your deck only if it contains at least 20 different card names among non-resource cards. Now, constructed, you're probably not going to be using Servant of Shathak, but in limited,
okay.
It is amazing in limited.
Yeah, you the odds of you getting more than, more duplicates than 20, is really hard unless you got a lot of good cards. And even so, if you're going to run Servant of Shathak, you're going to intentionally kind of keep 1-ofs in your deck just to have such a powerhouse card.
Yeah, because you drop this thing early, and it's going to be hitting them every single turn until they get a flyer out. And there's not any good 1 or 2-drop flyers out there. So this thing is pay 1 and at least get 4 damage in.
And if you're playing against someone that's using Ruby, yeah, they'll have to use a couple of burn spells to get rid of it. You know, you have burn and you have a few other stuff.
Yeah, but you made them use your burn on a 1-drop.
Exactly. There's no downside to this in sealed or drafting, and if you're thinking about playing a Sapphire deck, this is one that you have to keep.
He is fantastic. Next up we have the Splinter of Az-Athoth. He's a 4-cost, 3 blue threshold with flight, and he's a 3/4. He has a one-shot ability for 2 that says interrupt target card. If that card is interrupted this way, put it back into its owner's hand. Now, constructed, it's okay. It's not something I don't think I would put in any deck, but it's also has a pretty big drawback for limited too. You'd have to run almost solid Sapphire for this thing to be includable in your deck because of the 3 Sapphire threshold.
You know, it's risky enough to run 2 threshold. And even with the way they've changed resources in this compared to like Magic the Gathering, it's still risky to run 2 because you have to depend on the fact that you've at least drawn it up by turn 4. And it for 3/4 for a 3 blue threshold, you're expecting a little bit more.
Then again, in a solid blue constructed deck, its one-shot ability slows people down, but people already know it's on the board. Then again, if you're playing a control deck, everybody already knows that you're going to be countering stuff. But, I don't know. I don't see this card getting a lot of play.
No, and it's probably going to be a poker rare. One that's just, you're going to get it and you're going to be like, oh, I got another Splinter. Woo. Make up for that, we have 2 cards that kind of synergize with each other. The first one is Briarpatch Conjurer. It is a 2-cost with a 2 green threshold, 1/2, and it has a tap effect. Add a seed counter to this troop, then create a Briar Legion for each seed counter on this card, and shuffle it back into your deck. Briar Legion is a 3-cost 0/0 plant that says this troop gets 2/2 for each Briar Legion that entered play under your control this game.
Now, that is amazing. Briarpatch Conjurer is snowball. If you're able to sift through your deck and get the same Briarpatch Conjurer out, and I mean, even if you're tapping her to make 2, you're putting out 2 4/4s, or at least 2 6/6s, because you had to use it once to get the first counter in the first place. So upon the second activation, you're getting 2 6/6 plants. That's amazing.
Not only that, there's such a large amount of search you can use with Wild right now. You have the 1-cost, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, grab a creature card and put it into your hand, as well as I can't remember the name of the card, but it allows you to reduce the cost of all creatures in your deck by 2, and they get +2/+2. So that even speeds up the process of putting cards into play. So you got really, really good options for this card to work, and the fact that the costs are so low for both Briar Legion and the Conjurer, it's going to be a fun card to play, and I can't wait to see how this works out.
Now, is Briar Legion its own standalone card as well, or is it only available as a conjunction with Briarpatch Conjurer? So is it only a token, or can you include the Briar Legion in your deck?
Well, the rarity on it is common, so I'm assuming that you might be able to get it standalone. Yeah, it's hard to tell with this. They didn't say if this card is only summonable or if it's able to be played. Some of the other token cards I've seen on the wikis, as well as other, updates and stuff like that, have this black or non-existent card number. So hopefully he has his own thing. Even so, that makes the card even more powerful. There's you can have more than 4 in the deck to start out with. And it's just oh, that's fantastic.
Either way, I really like Briarpath Conjurer, and I think if you made a deck around her, it would be pretty decent.
Yeah. That's it for all the new cards that were added recently. Some of the new features Cryptozoic's talking about is they're adding a lot of new activations of the stack. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the stack, it kind of allows you to trigger responses on certain effects that come into play, as well as attacking, blocking, and other effects. They've been kind of going back and forth on what activates the triggers and things that just kind of skip directly. Some of the things that they've added that you can actually attach responses to are things like taking damage to yourself, dealing damage to your opponent, gaining health, as well as activated effects.
So not all triggered abilities will go on the stack, but certain ones will. Anything that manipulates health is a big one that they changed.
Yes, because the last patch that they had it, you had things like the Ancestor Spirits and stuff like that, where every turn they would just kind of shake and then add cards to the deck. Same with Pack Raptors. There was no real way to respond to the activation of that ability. Yes, you could respond to the card coming into play, but that you can respond to any card that comes into play. So having more ways to activate other abilities is really crucial, because sometimes, like, you play Bombsmith and you couldn't do anything about taking damage. Like, if you had a life gain effect on the board and you're at 1 health, you couldn't respond to Bombsmith, so you would lose the game because you couldn't respond.
But they do want to find a good balance on this, and they're trying really hard because they don't want to bog down the game. They don't want to make each turn feel like you're just smashing that spacebar so you can get to the part that you actually want to interact with the stack. It's just finding the good balance, and they'll get there eventually. It's just more about how they want their game to play out.
And it's good that they're noticing that it's like some players are like, well, I've had situations where this stack thing has backfired on me. There's no way I can stop and say, hey, I have a response, because the game just is like, nope, you can't do anything now. Haha.
But, yeah. So I'm sure they'll get a good balance in here soon. It's gotten better, and it's continuing to get better, and I have every hope that they'll find that good mix.
And the last thing they added on patch 822, or 823, I should say, is that they added a new kind of subtype of card that activates with the new Mimic card, or the Doppelgadget. And this is a Mimic card, which is a colorless version of any card you copy that gains the Robot Replica subtype to it, as well as the original version.
And
the
it also makes it an artifact, obviously.
Yeah. The kind of example they gave us was Urizaz, the Black Dragon, and you can see that it lost all its threshold. It kept its name, the dragon type. It lost its uniqueness, and it also gained the Robot Replica effect. So you can have 2 of them in play, which is a very fantastic thing.
Yeah, it's the first way that we've seen to circumvent uniqueness.
Yeah, and uniqueness is a very, very prevalent thing in this game. It's not like Magic where there's like 1 or 2 per set. There's a lot of unique creatures and a lot of unique characters, so finding ways to put that out is fantastic.
But other than that, and a bunch of bug fixes, that's pretty much it for patch 823.
And the main update they gave us was the recent one from the Valentine's Day update. The main thing they wanted to show off is the new card UI and the updated graphics to it.
Yeah, what they did is they freshened up the border a little bit, made certain things shinier, made certain things a little more prominent, and it just gave it a much better flavor to the borders of the cards.
The cost icon at the top, the kind of diamond-y shape one, was replaced by an actual hexagon shape, which I think looks a lot better than a giant yellow spiky mess at the top corner. So it feels a lot cleaner and not as cluttered.
It has a good theme to it.
But we don't know if this is going to be a permanent thing or if this is only going to be, for certain updates, or they might be changing things around. But I like the way it looks. It looks a lot cleaner and a lot brighter.
And other than that, the Valentine's Day update just clarified what they're working on for the Open PvP beta. It says that they are going to include in the beta deck creation, collection management, 1v1 PvP, 1v1 versus AI, matchmaking, socketed cards, chat, friends construction tournaments, blah, 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 blah. And they also added max support, a VIP program. They're introducing guilds, the auction house, and the double-backed cards, which is the biggest thing that I noticed, because they touted those at the very beginning in the Kickstarter, but we haven't seen the double-backed cards yet, so this will be very interesting to see them finally introduced.
Yeah, they've been talking about double-back cards on how they're going to, have the stat tracking and, achievements on the back of the cards, and I can't wait to start testing that, because that's something I'm interested in, because I love actually having cards that I have kind of attachment to. That's something that's always been fun for me, because you can have that promo card in game It's like, yay, it's promo, but if you have achievements on that card, you're like, I kind of want to hold on to this one. This is my card. I earned it.
Yeah, and you get to show them off every time you play somebody or you're in a tournament where people are watching. It's going to be fantastic. I'm really excited about it.
And the one thing that you were talking to me before this update was, is there going to be an auction house?
And yes, there is. They haven't mentioned whether it's going to be real money. I hope it's not, because if Diablo taught us anything, that
Blizzard regrets it still.
But I do believe for the secondary market of this game to flourish, it's going to be real money. They need to do it right, because there's a really good example. It took a while for people to figure out how to do Magic the Gathering online and actually make it fluid with how you pay people for their cards and trade people, and PayPal helped a lot with that, but Magic the Gathering Online existed before PayPal.
And people used eBay to kind of sell the cards because it was a better system than just going through and trading and then kind of finding other ways to trade and have a reasonable way to do it. So, it's going to be good that they're going to kind of cut that out and get rid of the middleman and say it's going to be available in the game and it's going to be in a safe environment.
Yeah, I don't want it to get too out of hand, because if you have an auction house that involves real money and in-game currency, it basically gives real-life value to the in-game currency.
And a good example of that was during Guild Wars 2, where they made the currency that you could buy with real money very, very prominent. Like, if you put in the currency exchange from gold to their gems, gold was worth, like, an exceptionally high amount of gems. So you can use gems and have that currency used, or you can use the gold system, which they didn't correlate between each other very well, but they had their prices that were very reasonable.
Yeah, that's just my little rant on that. It's very important that they get the auction house right. I don't want it to become Diablo all over again.
Pay to win, and especially in a TCG MMO like this, paying to win could essentially kill the game for people.
Sure would for me, but then again, it's going to be a card game. Paying money is going to be a part of this game. It's going to be a little bit of an investment sink for people, and if the better players are going to have more cards. And I don't know. I'm worried because my bank account is going to just dry up once this game gets released. I'm too excited about it, and I'm just going to do it right.
And we're going to have our guild available, since Jolly Green is a Guildmaster tier level backer. He's going to give us all experience boosts and love and friendship.
That's right. Anybody in the Hexologists Guild is going to get a permanent 10% PvE experience forever.
Forever. So, be a fan of the show early, or else you won't get access to the guild.
Yeah, I'm going to be very picky about who I let into the guild. So,
your name is Killer Haxors 1212. Accepted.
I banged your mom last night. Wow, that's rude. Accepted. All right.
A few other development stuff that they're talking about is a new type of card. Kind of, what do they call it exactly?
Evolution cards?
Yeah, I kind of want to call them evolution or level up cards. But these cards, kind of, the more you use them, they get to level up and increase their abilities as well as effectiveness in the gameplay. And the card that they gave us is the Dark Water, which is a ship. It's a 5-cost, 2 blue threshold, 3/4 ship, and it has a crew of 2. So the Dark Water starts out with 2 people on the ship. Has a one-shot ability, which is a tap effect. Deal 1 damage to target champion or troop for each crew member aboard the Dark Water. The effect alone kind of sounds iffy, but later on it gains the ability Man of the People. 2-cost effect that says you permanently increase the crew by 1, and it gains an additional +1 health and +1 attack. Or it just gains +1 health. And then it increases its crew no matter if it's in play or not. And at level 15, it can ready its cannons to deal an additional one-shot effect for each crew, so it can do more stuff as it gets played.
No, the reload the cannons, it says pay 2, and it just says basically reload the cannons. It lets you redo the one-shot power.
Yeah, I messed up on speaking because I'm confused.
That happens a lot. Anyway, at level 20, it says the captain goes down with the ship. Damage that would be dealt to the Dark Water is dealt to you instead. Which, I'm not sure if that's,
a good thing.
Yeah, is that a good thing? Is this card really that good that you want to sacrifice your own health for its survival?
If you splash green, that might not be a bad idea, but is it worth, dealing 3 or 4 each turn at the cost of 4?
I don't know. This card just has an immense amount of flavor to it. Just building a deck around the Captain Galloway, Dark Water.
And the fact that you can only get it from completing his dungeon and fighting the Kraken or whatever. So getting to it, you have to go through a lot of lore and a lot of story to actually get a hold of the card. So right away you're like, yep, I got the Black Water or whatever. I've got the card, and I have it to level 20. So, ha!
Have they announced what the level cap is going to be upon release?
I have no idea, but right now we already have 20.
Yeah, we know it's at least 20.
Now, I'm not sure if that's the card level 20 or if that's the player level.
Do cards level up?
I'm not sure what a mercenary does. We just got a preview, so I'm kind of excited to see how that turns out.
Yeah, other than that, we just have a few more development notes on patch 823.
Which was released separately.
Yeah, I don't know why they just made an addendum to it, but they made some changes. They made Soul Marble cost 2 instead of 1. It seemed to be a little OP. They made Shell Safe Sure Shot.
Say that 4 times fast.
Yeah, they increased its attack from 2 to 3, so it's a 3-2 now. And Blood Crazed Zealot.
They swapped its attack and defense from being a 4
instead of a 4/5.
Woo, that card is so powerful.
Yeah, and they increased the Grim Skull Sorcerer defense from 1 to 2, and its attack from 2 to 1. So they swapped its numbers too, and it's a socketable miner. So they're just making a few, flavor changes. I'm not sure.
The reason why they swapped the attack and defense on that card is because it was extremely powerful with different gem sockets, especially the ones that, when this card comes into play, deal damage to an opponent's life on how much attack it has. For 2 cost, you get a 2/1 that would deal 2 directly, and that was really powerful, and they kind of wanted to scale that back a bit.
And they also changed Rocket Ranger. It's the 3 for a 1 red threshold dwarf. It's a 2/2, and it gains various abilities depending on how many artifacts you have. And they just reworded some of it, changed a couple of the numbers, but I love Rocket Ranger. I'm building a deck around this guy. He's too good.
There needs to be an alternate art where he's like a superhero. Please, can that be a thing?
It's
Rocket Ranger!
One of my favorite cards. I will build a deck around him.
He's a fantastic card. He didn't have as much potential, but now that we have that 1 cost, artifact that grabs a threshold, by turn 3 he already has flying if you have that out. So,
and they also changed Stormcall. It used to cost X and say exhaust X troops as a quick action. Now it costs 4 and it says exhaust all opposing troops. They just thought it was too versatile early game.
Yeah, I could see that. It was very powerful. I really liked the fact for an uncommon, you can kind of control the board as much as you wanted for how much you wanted to pay for it. So it's like, okay, it's turn 3, I didn't play anything this turn, I can tap 3 things, protect myself. Now it just kind of taps the whole board, and for the cost, that's really useful. It's an essentially evacuation for Magic the Gathering. Or no, it was...
Exhaustion.
Exhaustion. But still, Exhaustion's a really great card, and people still use it today, so it still is going to get play, but not as much.
And they removed a couple cards from the game entirely. Actually, they removed Field of Poppies, which was the exhaust all troops with toughness 3 or less. And they removed Persecute, which I actually liked Persecute. It's a 2 cost, 1 black threshold. Target troop gets -3/-3 for a quick action. I don't know why they removed it.
Their reasoning for it was they had 3 other cards in black that could do a bit better. For 4 cost you had Extinction, for 3 you had Murder, and for 5 you had Terrible Transfer, which deals 1 damage for each blood threshold you have, and you gain 1 life for each threshold. So they thought that this card was kind of redundant for the cost.
Well, I think they didn't want to have all forms of removal in one color, i.e. destroy everything, destroy target creature, deal damage equal to the number of resources you have. So damage, destruction, mass destruction, and death by negatives.
And I'm kind of sad to see Field of Poppies go. A lot of people are like, well, that doesn't synergize very well with Shin Hair. But the thing is, though, you're not going to be running that in a Shin Hair deck. I felt that was a great counter to card decks like that. There's a lot of cards that can spawn low-level defense creatures. There's a lot in black with the Spiderlings. You can do the Shin Hair. There's a lot of orcs that are really, really powerful, but they have low-cost defense. So green had a really, really powerful defensive mechanism if you're running a lot of large creatures with high defense
and green does
control.
That because it's ramp.
Yeah. So it's a really powerful card, and they're saying they're getting rid of it because it hurts Shin Hair decks, but it's like it's not made for Shin Hair decks. It's meant for like mono wild decks that can, put out big creatures. It's supposed to be that way. So hopefully we get to see a return of that. They said that they are not going to be permanently removed. They might find ways to bring them back in other sets. So
they're just trying to figure out what they want each color's flavor to be, and that's fair.
Yeah, you never know. They might spice up what each color is soon.
And they might add those cards to different colors. Just different names, same ability. Who knows?
Who knows? And that's really about it. We got a lot of stuff to cover this week. Hopefully our episodes aren't as long in the future because we're covering 2 patches and kind of updating on what's going on. So we'll probably have shorter shows in the future unless you guys want us to have longer shows. This is still development phase of our show, seeing what you guys want to listen to, what you want us to cover, what you don't want us to cover.
And we're going to be very feedback oriented. We want you to give us feedback on what you want to hear, what you want us to talk about. Get some discussion going based on, do you agree with us? Please tell us if you disagree with us, because we love that kind of discussion. We want to go back and forth with you. If we completely got a card wrong, like just flavor-wise and whether it's going to be good or not, tell us. We want to hear the discussion. We want to get people going on it, and we want people to listen to the show, obviously. So we're going to have contests in the future, and yeah, we just want to be a very community-oriented type of show. So just let us know what you want to hear.
And when the guild is actually created, that's when we can actually start doing guild announcements, guild events, guild, only things that happen. Like if you're in the guild, we're going to have a guild-only dungeon raid, or we're going to have an event where guildies must donate a card and we randomly send cards out. We'll have all sorts of fun stuff for people that are going to be committed enough to join us and create that community. So we're going to kind of build that up from the start before we even have the guild.
Yep, we just want to get our listeners involved.
And that's always the most fun. So for the prototype episode of the Hexology podcast, this has been Water Elemental
and Jolly Green.
And we'll see you guys next time.